Hold up.
Oh, hey guys, it's me again, Jail Joe, and I just wanted to say that we're super glad that you're here today with us online.
What are you? I am the announcer now. Okay, I am in prison, but they gave me Sundays off to continue the announcements.
But you're the reason that I'm in prison.
I am Lawyer Lou. You may remember my client, Joe. He was sued by his grandmother, Mary Sue. I had that case. It didn't go well. And now he's in prison for a very long time.
So why didn't they give me Sundays to continue now?
You had your chance, Joe. You had your chance.
How's Bob Ross's son doing?
I gotta lie low for a little bit. Turns out, Bob Ross's son doesn't like being harassed. He still doesn't like being harassed. Anyway, hope you all don't sign in, because, you know, we're online today. And see how I move? The prices go up later on, so you better do it now before they go up. Current series, save the date. And after this video, head to your Google Hangout with your small group. Well,
hey Joe, it's your lucky day. Your parents posted bail and you're getting out of here.
we have the same parents. Why is he? I'll tell Bob Ross's son to say hello. See you guys later.
Hey guys, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well this fine Sunday evening. It's been an interesting day. We're having our high school gatherings online in light of everything going on right now. Hope that you guys are staying healthy and that you're feeling pretty good. We're in this series called Save the Date, and last week we talked about the idea that, you know, if you want to find the right person, you should probably focus on becoming the right person, because becoming the right person is far greater than finding the right person. The right person is never going to fix any of your issues or make you feel complete or make you happy. That starts with you, and then it's not fair to put those expectations on other people. And the whole point of the series is, if you want to have a good dating life, if you want to date well and have no regrets and have satisfied relationships, then this is the route you got to take. We got to look and see what God says and what His Word says when it comes to how we handle our date lives, especially in high school. There's a lot of different ways to date, and we just want you guys to have the most successful dating lives as possible. And if there's one interesting thing, one difficult thing that we know when it comes to dating, it's that sometimes when we're dating someone, when we're in a relationship, we can kind of throw common sense out of the window. We start to just live by our emotions, by what we're feeling, and we kind of stop thinking through things the way that we did when we were single or when we were looking for the right person. You know, when we're in a relationship, it's really easy just to throw all that common sense out the window and just live by what feels right. And that can be dangerous for a lot of ways in a lot of areas of life, but especially when it comes to dating. The problem can be that sometimes when we're in a dating relationship, we can't always see things clearly. And when someone can't see things clearly, they make decisions that they wouldn't ordinarily make. And it's kind of funny how you see this playing out in other people's lives. You can see it in other people's relationships. You can see, oh, well, they're kind of living in fairy tale land. They're not being real with themselves. The reality is, we can see that in other people, but sometimes we can't always see it in ourselves, especially when we're in high school, especially when dating is still somewhat new. Some of you don't even have your driver's license yet, and so dating means your parents drop you off somewhere. But the reality is that it's really easy to just kind of live by what we feel and not to really be able to see outside of the bubble of our own relationship. And sometimes we can't see the issues with the decisions that we're making and stuff like that. We all have good ideas. We all have general rules about who we're going to date and how we're going to date before we start to date. Things like never date a cheater, right? Don't date someone who brings you down. Don't date someone who treats you poorly. Don't date someone who's going to pull you away from your friends, your goals, your values, anything else like that. We have these kind of rules when we go into relationships, and that's good, that's healthy. But the problem can be is that once we're in the relationships, it's really easy to kind of let some of that slide, to see ourselves as the exception of something. And when we actually start to fall for somebody, our emotions and our predetermined rules and decisions, well, those all become a little bit more flexible because you're not dealing with a theory anymore, you're dealing with an actual person. The question though is what are you going to do about that? When that happens, when you get in a relationship and that happens, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to safeguard and protect yourself when you know that when you start to fall for someone that's real, that you really like and you want to spend time with and you want to date and you want to date well? How do you maintain healthy boundaries, healthy rules? And we'll talk more about boundaries next week, but the idea still remains, how do we date well in the midst of complex emotions, all that comes along with dating? How do you save your dating life from decisions that you'll regret? And in order to talk about this, I want to go to a story in the Bible that we don't talk about a whole lot, but I think has a lot to do with this topic. And it's about David, the king of Israel, debatably one of the greatest kings Israel ever had. And David was known as a victorious general, a leader. He was the man who slayed Goliath. He was known as a man after God's own heart. And so David had a great reputation. He had led God's people and his kingdom well. And so this is where he is, and you and I, we tend to get this way. When we get comfortable somewhere, when we've achieved a lot, when we're feeling good about ourselves, we kind of let our guard down. And in the story we're going to talk about is during a time where the nation of Israel was going to war. And usually what a king would do in those times is a king would go and fight alongside his troops. They wouldn't be on the front lines, but they would be traveling with their troops and go to war with their people. So this is where we're going to pick up the story in 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting in verse 1. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. So while David's army was out at war, he was at home, bored, kind of kicking his feet back. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't out with his people, which was out of the ordinary. And what do you and I tend to do when we're bored? If we're honest, if we don't have good hobbies, or if we neglect our hobbies and when we're bored, then we usually just get ourselves into trouble. And so David, being bored and at the height of his career as a king, he is on the top of the roof and he's looking out over his kingdom, and he looks down and he sees Bathsheba. She's a beautiful woman who's out taking a bath, and there David is on top of the kingdom looking down and seeing her on her balcony. And so David, known as being a man after God's own heart, doesn't live like a man after God's own heart. And he kind of throws his own rules out the window and lets his emotions of what he wants kind of step in and take over. So he sees Bathsheba, and then he sends someone out to find out about her. And here's what they say. In verse 3, his servant came back and reported, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." And David wasn't interested in the logic. He just knew what he wanted. And David sends someone to bring Bathsheba to him. Now, he didn't care about the logic. He didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. In fact, what he does is he goes and probably justifies himself the same way that you and I justify ourselves when we're contemplating a tough decision. He was probably thinking, I'm an exception to the rule, or what I want isn't all that bad, or I can handle the consequences, right? But what I want right now is more important. And so David has someone bring her to him. He sleeps with her, and she ends up pregnant. Uh-oh. Well, now these consequences are much greater than he thought that they were going to be. And he's got to come up with a solution. He's got to come up with one fast. So as he's panicking, he calls for Uriah, her husband, to come home from the war, which was out of the ordinary. And so, in my opinion, Uriah probably had suspicions about why he was brought back. Once he got back and realized the king is treating me with special service and he's wanting me to spend time at home with my wife. See, David is thinking if he can get Uriah to sleep with his wife, then they can claim that Uriah got her pregnant and all this kind of stuff, and it wasn't his. But I think either Uriah outsmarted him, or what he says to David is, how can I enjoy the comforts of my home and my wife while the rest of my brothers are out fighting? They're out fighting in the war, and you've brought me home. You brought me out of the fight. And so Uriah sleeps on the doorstep. He doesn't even go in the house. So David is like, okay, another problem now. How am I gonna get rid of this guy? And so he goes out and he says, okay. He sends Uriah back out to war, but he gives special instructions for him to be sent to the front lines so that he'll be slaughtered in the battle. That's what happens. So ultimately, David is responsible for the murder of Uriah, Bathsheba's husband. Well, then David comes and makes Bathsheba one of his wives. And you'd think that that would be the end of it, but it's not. And sometimes when we're in the middle of a situation, we lose perspective. We lose sight of what's most important. We convince ourselves that we are the exception, that it's not all that bad. You know what happens when we think that we're the exception? We're in denial. So throughout David's ordeal, he was asking all the wrong questions. He was asking, how can I get away with it? How can I avoid the consequences? You know, those are all the wrong questions to be asking. When we believe that we're the exception to the rule, we can justify just about anything. We can tell ourselves that things are okay when in reality, they're not. And here's the thing, that when it comes to dating, when it comes to your date life, you owe it to yourself to be honest. And you owe it to the person that you're with to be honest as well. There's no point to living in denial. You're only hurting yourself and the other person that you're dating. Now, is there an area where you're not being honest with yourself? So when did David realize how far he had gotten off track? Well, it's when the prophet Nathan comes in and starts talking to him about the situation. And we all need a person that will speak up in our lives and be honest with us, ask the tough questions, and have the tough conversations with us. The person who will be honest with us when we are not always being honest with ourselves. So this week, I want to encourage you to do 3 things. 1, find your Nathan. Find someone who is going to pull out the best in you, that is going to ask you the tough questions, and who is going to force you to be honest with yourself. 2, ask them directly to help you see the areas of your life where you're not being honest with yourself. And 3, listen to them. Now, don't go find a Nathan that's a yes man and that's just going to tell you whatever you want to hear. Find someone who is going to tell you the brutal, honest truth, who is going to help you see, and who has a proven track record to want what's best for you and to want to honor God with their lives. The reality is that all of us can end up in a million different places that we never intended to be. So to end up where you want to be in your relationships and in your dating life, in order to save the date, then you have to be willing to be honest with yourself. You need to find a way to be honest with yourself and to find someone who will be honest with you. I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic week. I know it'll be an interesting week. I'm looking forward to hanging out with some of you guys in the Google Hangout afterwards. Remember, that starts at 7:30 tonight, so make sure that you're on guard and listening to your small group leaders when they send out the link and all that good stuff. So love you guys, and I will hopefully see you next week, but if not, we'll catch you online. Stay engaged with us on Instagram, and we'll see you guys soon.